Hello, my name is Erin Gibbons, and this is my presentation on collaboration for the IAP Case Manager. The IAP case management is usually done by someone who is the special education teacher, although it can be a person that is designated specifically to run cases, but this is just the most common scenario that it is the special education teacher. A case manager is the person who makes sure that all services are in place for students and that the records are kept and that everything happens on time. They are also in charge of collaborating with other team members who are part of their student's case. They are also responsible to make sure that all paperwork and services are up to date and that everything is ready for the rough draft of the IEP before the meeting. As you can see, they have a lot of responsibility, and it is important to learn all the laws for being an IEP case manager. The primary responsibilities of the case manager are to assure compliance with procedural requirements, communicate and coordinate among home, school, and other agencies, regular and special education programs, facilitate placement, train classroom staff, and schedule team meetings. They also refer students who need additional services such as speech or occupational therapy and make sure that the assessments are done. They are also the chair for the IEP meeting and they must attend all meetings. And they need to give written notice to parents and other team members that will be a part of the IEP team. And they also implement and monitor the IEP meetings. They are the ones who are in charge of presenting the findings and making sure that everybody is attending and scheduling and all that goes along with it. One of the reasons why collaboration is so important as an IEP case manager is because we work with a lot of people, a lot of parents, a lot of families. And even though collaboration is the action of working with someone to produce or create something, is what we're doing, it's considered a noun, but I think of it as a verb. And it's necessary to have regular communication with everyone that you work with. So it is definitely a lot of work and responsibility to make sure that an IEP happens in a timely manner. And the people that we work with the most are general education teachers, other special education teachers, speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, psychologists, students, and parents. We also have paraeducators who are an extremely important part of our team because they often work with students more so than we do, especially if the student has mainstream classes during the day. The paraeducator might follow them from class to class and tutor them throughout the day, and they have a great understanding of what our students are capable of, what they need help with, and what their behavior is like, and they can be a really big part of our IEP team. Without them, our classrooms would not run the same, and our students would not be as successful. And by law, the IEP team has the following: the general education teacher, special education teacher, service provider such as the case manager, who may be separate. A school district representative is often the principal, vice principal, or someone else from the school, is not always from the school district. The person who conducted the assessment and other providers such as occupational or speech therapy who will be part of the student's team. They are all supposed to be at the team at the meeting, and sometimes we do have to excuse certain members to go back to work, but they do need to be there for at least their portion of the meeting. And timeline for compliance is extremely important as a case manager because if we do not comply, we are breaking particular IEP laws, and it's not a good thing for our students because it delays their services. The child find is annual, and that means that we have the IEP meeting every year and everything is reassessed. we can change goals and reevaluate what the student is doing well in and see where they need help and have the parents give input as well. An oral request for evaluation by the parent must be received and processed within 10 days of having the request. And the evaluation must happen within 60 days, although it usually happens faster, but we do have this timeline because a lot of schools have really heavy case loads, and this gives us time to get everything done. And the IEP must occur within 30 days. Request in annual meetings to update goals. So if a parent requests an IEP meeting, they have 30 days to process and schedule it and hold the meeting. Although emergency IEPs can be held within 24 to 72 hours, depending upon the situation and how much time we have given the school to process that request. And a parent has the right to request an emergency IEP anytime. And we have the reevaluation every 3 years. It's the triennial, and it's a big deal because the psychologist has to do an IQ test, which can take several days with the students. And we also have to do reevaluations for speech, occupational, adaptive PE, whatever other services the student might be receiving, to see what their proper placement is and if we need to change, whether they can mainstream or they need to be placed in special day class, or just keep things the way that they are so that the students' education is running smoothly. And there are other tasks that we have to do during the school year. We need to review cases at the beginning of the school year, especially with students who might be new, moved up a grade, which is every year. So we meet with the psychologist to assess and determine where a student is supposed to be placed and whether or not they need other services. And manifest determination only occurs if a student has been suspended for 10 or more days. Obviously, these are for students who have more severe behavioral problems, and we might need to determine if they need county placement or ABA therapy or anything else like that to see if they can continue in a regular classroom or if they need special day class or whatever the situation might be. And case managers are also in charge of lots of records, and they need to keep them organized in a safe, secured environment, such as locked cabinets. And also electronic records need to be kept safe because these do contain personal information about the student, especially their health. So it's important that we safeguard our students. And communication has been one of the bigger aspects of this class. Collaboration and communication go hand in hand. They can't happen without one or the other. And I have some advice for communicating well with our coworkers, because the way that we present things to our coworkers can set the tone for how they perceive what we're saying and how they react to it. So the way that we react towards them can make all the difference. One of the most important things about collaboration is holding informal meetings to make sure that everyone feels heard and their concerns are addressed, because sometimes we might not know if a certain student is causing problems, especially if we don't see them every single day. Although in most cases we will see our students daily, the student might not always be honest about what's going on. So it's really important to stay in touch with the teachers and whoever else they're working with and make sure that things are running smoothly, and if we need to make new accommodations, if the student needs to be placed in a different classroom, etc., or modifications. So another thing I learned as an undergrad in my counseling classes is that we need to use I statements instead of you statements, especially if we're giving any sort of constructive criticism or there's been a problem. We need to say something like, I feel that we need to change this for the student because this is how it's affecting them. So when we approach it this way, we're not attacking that person and they don't become defensive. Whereas if we say, you need to change this because you made your student angry, is not really the best way to approach it, because then they will end up feeling defensive and not wanting to work with you. And that can really be detrimental to the students as well. So if you receive criticism, you need to be open to it and willing to address it, because sometimes we might not see something that we can fix and it's easy to fix. So it's important that we listen to other teachers and anyone who's part of our staff. We should be respectful of the things that they have to say, even if they're not necessarily the nicest things that we want to hear. They're still important to consider and try to fix. And often they might have an outside suggestion that we haven't noticed, particularly if there's something that we can fix in a student's curriculum or accommodations. It can be really helpful to work with other people and always be open to what they have to say. And if we show others that we really care about what we're doing and what they're doing, and we acknowledge what they're doing, we can build a lot more trust that way and develop a really great team to work with. Being able to work well with others is a really important part of collaboration, because without it, we can't accomplish as much. And team building is probably the biggest part of working with others. And I think that just getting to know each other and as part of teams is a really good way to do it, because then they end up feeling like we're on their side. And for collaboration skills, we should all be on the same page for the goals. Even if we have different ideas, we can still compromise or change our goals so that we are working together instead of against each other, because a teacher might have a different idea than what falls in line with the student's IEP. So maybe we need to educate them on what the student's IEP is for and why it needs to be this way. So we might be able to work better with them in creating IEP goals. And we also need to actively listen. And this is especially important with the parents, because sometimes I think, at least myself, I often feel like the IEP team isn't taking the parents' feelings and ideas into consideration. And I think it's really important to do that, because obviously outside of school, that's who the child spends most of their time with. So we also need to try to withhold judgment, because there's a lot of diversity in our schools these days, and it's no longer just primarily married heterosexual families raising their students. It's a lot of blended families. A lot of children are adopted or in foster care. They might have same-sex parents or whatever relatives raising them. There's all sorts of situations that can happen these days. So we need to make sure that we just allow the parents to present their ideas, and that's all that we're there to do, is to help them and their student achieve their academic goals and make sure that their students and parents feel that they're in a safe environment for their education. And we need to let them know that we've heard their concerns and that we either have an idea on how to address it at that point, or we can tell them that we'll get back to them within a couple of days to address that concern, and we'll find a way to do it, and we can continue to work on it. And it's really important to delegate responsibility and help each other plan lessons, because a lot of time our students will need extra attention in certain areas. Maybe a kindergartner has a speech problem, and the kindergarten teacher can help the speech therapist create lesson plans for the whole classroom, and that way it really implements the students' educational services. And there's so many other ways that we can work with our team to create a really ideal situation for our students. And also, I think it's really important that we listen to the teachers and take them seriously as our biggest ally, because they're the ones who spend the other majority of the time with our student, even if they're a regular ed teacher, they might be spending a good portion of the day with our students who receive special education services. And I think if a teacher has a problem with the student, or maybe they've noticed something change with the student, we need to really listen to them and to make sure that that problem is addressed. And if a parent has a concern, we also need to document what they have to say and handle it within a very timely manner, because I think a parent feels discouraged when they're not taken seriously, and it makes them more defensive and much harder to work with when we create a hostile environment. And if we at least let them know that we're working on it, I think that we can take their suggestions as well and maybe implement it into the classroom very easily. Or we might have an idea ourselves that can solve whatever the problem might be. And if we have disputes on our team, we need to approach them and ask if they have a solution that they could use, because I think sometimes people end up arguing because they feel like they're not heard, and we can really go a long way by asking them if there's something that we can do, or if they have something that they would like to do to handle it. Face-to-face meetings are probably one of the biggest ways to create a better environment, because electronic communication can be misinterpreted. So we need to make sure that we have regular communication in person. And if we're on the same page from the beginning, we can accomplish a lot more, because there's a lot less conflict, and just regular communication will keep the door open to being able to collaborate with each other. Because if you make yourself available, that means that you're there for their team and your student. And like I said, so many students are in very unique situations. They're not always living with their own family. They might be living with their grandparents or aunt and uncle or older brother or sister. And when these families come in, we need to just treat them as the parent or the caregiver of the student and nothing else. We need to leave any judgment about religious beliefs or whatever their lifestyle might be is not what's important, as long as the student is being treated well by them, and they're being treated well at home, then that's what's most important. Because I think the majority of parents who get IEPs for their students are usually pretty good with their kiddos at home. So we need to treat them with the same respect that we give to our coworkers and all of that. So that way the parents feel heard and they can help us create the students' IEP goals. And one of the other things that we need to learn as IEP case managers, is we have a lot going on, is to deal with stress, and being able to leave it at work is a great way to prevent some of the stress in our own family lives and home lives. So being prepared ahead of time is a really great way to relieve stress, and having everything organized and able to find it, not all over the place, is a much better way than trying to organize everything at the last minute, and keeping checklists and making sure that you've communicated with whoever you need to well ahead of time to make sure that they also know when everything is supposed to be. That way we're not rushing at the last minute and causing a lot more stress for everyone. And one of the main sources of stress for teachers is the fact that we have a lot of work going on, especially if we're also case managers. We need to try to delegate things, not control everything. But if we're in control of what we're supposed to be in charge of, it's a lot easier. And when it comes to our own personal stress, we need to take better care of ourselves, and we need to eat well and drink plenty of water and sleep well and get some light exercise every day so that we're feeling our best, and that can help with stress quite a bit. And we also need to take time to enjoy ourselves and enjoy our days off. And as far as outside resources go, you might be able to even talk to the school psychologist or counselor and see if they have ideas for you or if they can recommend someone outside of the school if you need extra help in anything. So um, I think that covers quite a bit of collaboration and communication with other people in our schools. And when we're working with others, the most important things to remember are to listen actively and with empathy, because it shows that we truly care about our students and our coworkers, and that can go a really long way. We also need to document our conversations and keep them organized so that we don't forget what someone told us and we have the information available for later if we need it. And even though we'll have hiccups throughout the process, it's possible to find good solutions to working through them, especially when we keep the door open and we are always open to whatever other people have to say. And we just can't be in control of everything. We need to delegate and find help when we need it, and we should also have other people on our team be willing to take on responsibility for other things. And the biggest thing to remember is that working with others is a process, is never perfect. It might take time to develop a really good team, and if we have to add someone new, it can go back to square one. And it's a long process of working. Is constant, it's always changing. So we as educators need to do our best to collaborate with others. Thank you.